One of my favorite stories is the story of a young army man. He was a soldier who grew up. His mom had taught him, his dad had taught him. Every night he needed to be praying beside his bed. He did that all through his childhood years, did it all through his teenage years. He showed up at the army and he kept the same practice up. When it was time for bed, he would kneel down beside his bunk and he would pray to God. And you can't imagine the response that got. Soldiers would ridicule him, they would mock him. And one night after they had had a particularly long and muddy hike, he knelt down beside his bed. And while he was knelt there, this boot came from across the room and struck him in the side of his head. He didn't react to it, but he just put the boot aside and continued praying. It wasn't too many words farther in his prayer till he heard the sound of again something flying, and it hit him in the ribs, the second boot. And he continued to pray and got in his bunk. The next morning, the soldier who had thrown those boots found the boots polished, cleaned, and shined, sitting back beside his bunk. And God used that to break down that man's heart for Christ. You know, what boots have been tossed your way? Even when you may be trying to do the best that you can for God, and people are just reacting certain ways to you, there's no excuse for it. They're not responding necessarily to anything you've done to justify it. They are just treating you a certain way, and you don't deserve to be treated that way. You know, in what ways are you taking what they have thrown your way and giving it back in love? You know, that is a divine strategy. You know, we have a choice. We can live the world's way, or we can live God's way. You know, the world's way makes human sense, but God's way makes divine sense. We can live in the natural, we can live in the supernatural. You know, those are the choices that we have. But a life that's surrendered and no longer is living for self first. It is amazing what agape love can do through that life. You know, what would happen in Hannibal if Christians started to live this way? As we look at Hannibal today and we assess the spiritual need that is here, how much of that can be laid at the doorsteps of the fact that Christians are not living this way and not being this kind of witness that would transform this community and affect it everywhere that Christians went and began to show this kind of love. You know, there are some naive people that come into churches from time to time, and they begin to hear what is preached. Maybe they've studied the Bible, and they come in here wide-eyed expecting the greatest things. And they're not here long, and they begin to see that the same attitudes, same behaviors that the world has is sitting right here. And they walk away and maybe never come back because they said, I thought it would be there. But when I got there, it wasn't. And that was the opportunity for that church. If it had been living as Christ had called it to live, walking with surrendered lives, that was that open window for that person to really be reached with the gospel. What are the possibilities if this was who we were and this kind of love was coming through our lives? I'm going to ask you